If you can't listen to your husband, it's divorce. Understand?
I sighed quietly, making sure my husband didn't notice. I used to adore him, but now, in just a few weeks, I've come to despise him. My name is Birch. I'm a 42-year-old housewife and web designer. I used to work for a company, but I went independent 2 years ago. It's only recently that my business has started to take off. I met my husband, Anvil, through work. He specifically requested my design services, saying he was impressed with my work. We have been married for 5 years. We married late, so my in-laws don't pressure us about having children. I was already of advanced maternal age when we married, so I got checked and there were no issues. I asked my husband to get tested too, but he refused, so I don't know about him. But his words, "I just need you," were enough, and we left it to nature. Kind in-laws and brother-in-law and my husband. Our relationship with his family was good, I thought. After marriage, my husband started working late on weekdays. Yet his salary didn't change. I suspected infidelity at one point, but his attitude towards me didn't change and there was nothing suspicious on his phone. So I thought maybe he found a place to relax without telling me. 2 years ago, when I started working remotely, Anvil's attitude began to change. Household chores, which were split 50-50, now fell 90% on me. He even started belittling my job. Worse, he said I'm no different from a housewife. The last straw was our weekly visits to his parents' house. Originally, we used to stay overnight at my in-laws' house once a month. That was at Anvil's earnest request, and I didn't mind it at all. But as soon as I started working remotely, what was once a monthly visit became every 2 weeks and now every weekend this month. Hey, can we just relax at home next weekend for a change?
What are you talking about? You have it easy as a housewife, so you should properly attend to my parents' house.
What are you talking about? I work too. I want to relax a bit on my days off. My words turned his face red with anger. Once it gets to this point, conversation is impossible. I sighed quietly to myself. My attitude seemed to displease him, and his nagging didn't stop.
What an unfeeling wife you are. The worst.
I was thinking about something else until my husband finally fell silent, satisfied. It was 2 years ago that his abnormal attachment to his parents became apparent. It happened when his brother remarried and brought his new wife home. We had already been visiting every 2 months, but the frequency clearly increased. For these visits, my husband would lounge in the living room and I would be swamped with housework and chores. Still, seeing my husband in a good mood, I told myself being filial was important. My husband would beam with genuine happiness when my in-laws expressed their gratitude to me. So I knew he craved approval. Despite this, I continued to love him unchanged. Though he rarely showed it, the occasional words of gratitude made me believe he valued me as much as his parents. But a phone call from home made me realize I was wrong. Abay, he failed a medical test recently and they found cancer. I gasped at the news that Dad had been diagnosed with cancer. He had blood in his stool during a workplace health check and was advised to get a re-examination. The re-examination indicated a high likelihood of a malignant tumor in his liver. I shivered at the thought of the worst-case scenario. Dad, who had never even caught a cold, was the epitome of health. Now hearing about his sudden illness, he seemed shocked and downcast. I'm going to go back home for a bit. I'm worried about Mom. After hanging up with Mom, I suddenly remembered that we were supposed to visit my in-laws the next day. It's an emergency, so surely my husband would understand, but his response to my explanation was unexpected.
What about Mom's ride tomorrow?
Sorry, but can't you do it?
Huh? You made that promise, right? Are you breaking it? You know I'm busy helping Dad.
My father-in-law's help usually involves weeding or cleaning the storage. Missing his mother's ride should not be a problem, yet my husband insisted that I go for the visit to do these tasks. There wasn't a hint of concern for my dad in his reply. I'm not talking about forever, just tomorrow, please. I almost shouted in anger at my husband, but I held it back and pleaded awkwardly. Right now, getting to Dad as quickly as possible was what mattered.
No way! Lately, my parents haven't been happy about our visits. It must be because of you. I won't stand for it if my reputation suffers.
In recent months, my in-laws had started showing complex emotions when we visited. It was because they couldn't meet their grandchild born to my brother-in-law and his wife. My sister-in-law, younger than my brother-in-law, seemed to have a good relationship with my in-laws. But she's not fond of my husband, so when we visit, they stay away from their parents' house. Because they live in an area that requires a car, she can only visit on weekends when my brother-in-law is present. I heard that she does try to invite the in-laws to her house, but they are frustrated about not seeing their grandchild as they wish. It's because when we visit, my sister-in-law finds it hard to come, so they miss their grandchild.
Huh? All this fuzz just because they can't see a baby that's only 6 months old, a crying tiny thing compared to me, who's more useful?
I was stunned by my husband's words. Competing with a 6-month-old nephew, an adult married son, and a grandchild not even a year old? It's clear as day which one would be more cherished. Every visit, he just lies around in the living room, eats 3 meals a day, increases the laundry, and does a little bit of help. There is no way they would find him more adorable than their grandchild. Sensing my thoughts from my expression, my husband got up huffily and headed towards the bookshelf. Then he took out a piece of paper from his bag and laid it on the table. It was a divorce application.
Anyway, we're going as planned tomorrow. If you can't listen to your husband, it's divorce, you know?
He confidently presented the paper, which already had his signature and stamp on it.
Wait, are you serious? This is a terrible joke. I didn't want to use this, but you've been too cheeky lately for just a housewife, complaining about wanting breaks and all.
I felt dizzy with his selfish reasoning. After all, it was he who wanted to visit his parents, and I just went along. Is it so wrong for me to want a break sometimes after doing housework and working on weekdays? Then more housework at your parents' place on weekends?
Normally, a wife should suggest visiting her in-laws. If I didn't say anything, you wouldn't, right? It's natural for my parents to feel uncomfortable watching you.
I was furious at how he had exploited me these past 2 years. I wanted to punch his smirking face but clenched my fist and held back. Arguing now would only delay my return to my parents' house. Anyway, I'm going to my parents. I'm worried about Mom. My words seemed unexpected to him. He stared at me, face turning red.
So? You mean you can't listen to your husband? It's divorce then, okay?
I sighed without him noticing. The sight of him unable to back down from his own words was ridiculous. I wondered why I ever liked such a man. So, you're serious? All right, I get it. There's no other way, right? Realizing arguing further was pointless, I pretended to accept it. If I acted meekly while holding the divorce papers, my husband would look at me with a creepy, smug smile. Then, in an exaggerated manner, he stood up and patted my head. I resisted the urge to shake him off, and he, misunderstanding, went to the bedroom looking satisfied. I immediately called Mom and told her about the divorce. She was shocked, but after hearing the story, scolded me for not telling her sooner and urged me to come back quickly. After hanging up, I went to the bedroom. My husband was snoring, lights on. The snoring I once found cute now repulsed me. The man I loved so much, now just a subject of my loathing. I wondered if I was heartless, but then realized that such a thoughtless marriage was unnecessary. The next morning, I quietly left the house with my packed luggage and the divorce application. Knowing that the municipal office accepted documents on weekends, I stopped by to submit the fully completed divorce application. Then, I headed to my parents' house by train, meeting Mom and going to the hospital. The doctor had called Mom about Dad's illness. I braced myself thinking it might be a terminal diagnosis, but thankfully, Dad's cancer hasn't spread and was operable. He would lose part of his liver, but it wouldn't hinder his daily life, and he could return to normal life with regular checkups. Relieved by the doctor's explanation, Mom and I went back home. At home, I told Dad about his condition and my divorce. Dad was furious at my husband and almost stormed out, but Mom and I quickly stopped him. I could finally see through him because of you, Dad. Thank you. Hearing that, Dad scratched his cheek, not entirely displeased. Mom and I exchanged smiles at his reaction. I told Dad I would visit him in the hospital since I would be staying at home for a while. He insisted that I stay as long as I wanted, making me cry happily. Remembering my phone was up, I turned it on. Ignoring the countless calls from my ex-husband, I saw a message from my sister-in-law Gunnel on WhatsApp. It was a message of concern for my health and a report that my ex-husband had disrupted plans to buy toys for her son with my mother-in-law. Reluctantly, I realized my ex-husband was genuinely jealous of his 6-month-old nephew. The creepiness sent a chill down my spine. From the ex-sister-in-law's message, it seems I was reported to have stopped visiting due to ill health. However, since no details were given and my ex-mother-in-law's inquiries were evaded, my ex-sister-in-law found it strange and contacted me. However, I wouldn't be bothered if things were left as they are. But I owed it to my ex-in-laws who had been kind to me to at least say goodbye in person. So I decided to visit their house. After explaining everything to my parents that night, I took the first flight to my ex-in-law's house the next morning. Seeing cars parked outside their house upon arrival, I sighed. It seems my ex-husband had stayed over at their house. Despite forcing his wife, who wanted a break, to improve his standing, he doesn't seem to care about the poor impression he leaves by not returning home when his wife is supposedly ill. When I rang the doorbell, there was a rush of footsteps and my ex-husband appeared. It was just before noon. He glared at me with a demonic expression and yelled, "Where have you been all this time? You even turned off your phone." Where? As I said, I went back to my parents. Besides, I'm supposed to be ill, right? Are you okay shouting so loud that the whole house can hear? When I pointed this out politely, my ex-husband suddenly fell silent. "Anvil, what is this about?" A voice came from behind and my ex-husband turned around fearfully. It was my ex-in-laws who had come out in response to the bell. They both looked puzzled, having believed I was unwell. "Sorry for the sudden visit. I wanted to take a moment to thank you for everything and say goodbye as I'm getting divorced." As I bowed, my ex-in-laws looked at me in shock. "Birch, I thought you were sick, and this sudden talk of divorce?" "Hey, Birch, you're not still holding a grudge about the day before yesterday, are you? Stop joking around." My ex-husband's words prompted a reaction from my ex-in-laws. I smiled and explained the situation. "Actually, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. It was sudden, so I apologize for not contacting you. When I asked Anvil if I could go back home to hear the doctor's explanation, he refused, saying he had to drive his mother and threatened me with divorce if I went." My ex-mother-in-law covered her mouth, shocked at how terrible this was. My ex-father-in-law was shaking with anger. "Hey, I didn't say it like that, right?" My ex-husband tried to deny my words, but my ex-father-in-law's glare silenced him. "I was asked to prioritize my husband's parents even in an emergency, but I was worried about my dad and accepted the divorce to return home." "Birch, how's your father's condition?" "Thank you for your concern. It seems that surgery is possible for his cancer." "That's good to hear," my ex-in-law said with relief, then turned cold glares towards my ex-husband. He stiffened but desperately tried to excuse himself. "I wasn't serious. Birch had been lazy recently, not wanting to visit, so I wanted to motivate her." "Oh, but I thought Birch wanted to visit. We were happy to have her since she was so keen." My ex-mother-in-law's words made my ex-husband go pale. "No, but..." He struggled to find a reason but was cut off by my ex-father-in-law. "So, you've been lying to us too? Forcing her to visit and then speaking like that? When you marry, your wife's parents become your family too. To prioritize us over her emergency situation is just wrong." It seems my ex-in-laws had been asking me to do housework and chores because my ex-husband told him I wanted to. Was he so desperate for their approval? I felt sick at his selfishness and need for validation. But it couldn't end here. He wasn't just victimizing me. So as revenge against my ex-husband, I prepared something more, another trap. My ex-husband tried to deny my words, but my ex-father-in-law's glare silenced him.
What? Is that true?
Yes, Ganel also told me she's been treated terribly. Last night, when I thanked Ganel for contacting me and told her about the divorce, she shared the mistreatment she had received from my ex-husband. She was subjected to obscene comments about her appearance and constantly asked why she hadn't divorced yet. Furthermore, since her child was born, she was repeatedly told that the child was ugly, just a placeholder until her husband's own child arrived. This harassment, which started from the first visit for formal greetings, apparently continued yesterday. As soon as my ex-mother-in-law left the room, she was again asked why she hadn't divorced yet and told that she was already dismissed. Yes, right, Ganel? Yes, exactly as Bert said. Ganel's voice from my phone filled the quiet entrance hall. When I arrived at my ex-in-law's house, I had called my ex-brother-in-law's wife and put the call on speaker. Sniffling sounds and my ex-brother-in-law's comforting voice could be heard. I'm sorry, but I won't go there anymore to protect my wife and child. You did the same to my former sister-in-law, right? I confirmed it with her yesterday. You're the worst, not even a brother to me anymore. Don't ever contact us again. My ex-brother-in-law said all this in one breath and hung up. In the entrance hall, only the dial tone resonated and my ex-in-laws looked at my ex-husband with cold stares.
But it's true, she's just a woman who gave birth to a child, and it was the same with her previous wife. It's weird that she was praised and treated kindly. So I did it for mom and dad's happiness. You are the one who's wrong. We never asked for such things. My ex-father-in-law said coldly, dismissing my ex-husband's screams. Tears and snot all over his face, my ex-husband looked dumbfounded at my ex-father-in-law. If it was for us, then you're insane. My ex-mother-in-law added, and my ex-husband looked at her in disbelief. Then he suddenly turned to me with a pleading look. Hey, Barch, it's your fault. A wife should support her husband. Instead, you went against everything. But it's okay, right, Barch? We're a couple, right? Couples help each other, right? As my ex-husband grabbed my waist and spoke all at once, I smiled at him. If we were a couple, yes, but I filed the divorce papers yesterday. Now we are complete strangers. My ex-husband froze for a few seconds, then turned pale as he realized the situation. I let go of his limp hands, said goodbye to my ex-in-laws without a glance at my ex-husband, and left. Later, I heard my ex-in-laws kicked him out and cut ties with him. Both the in-laws and my ex-brother-in-law's family moved away, and my ex-husband ended up completely alone. Apparently, he then targeted a female colleague, becoming a stalker, and recently it turned into a police matter. It turned out he had been stalking her even while married to me. His late returns home were because he was following that woman. After being sued for stalking, he was fired from his job. Unable to pay his apartment rent, he moved to a shabby place. The reason I know all this is Ganel, my ex-sister-in-law. She regularly receives updates from acquaintances and eagerly shares them with me. Feeling guilty for not noticing her suffering, I apologized, but she just laughed, saying the fault was my ex-husband's. We have become close, occasionally having lunch together. She's expecting her second child, and I'm excited about what to get for the celebration. By the way, Dad's surgery was successful, and he returned home more energetic than ever. I moved back with my parents and continued my work, enjoying a happy life with them. Sharing housework with mom allowed me to focus more on work, and my income increased. So as a recovery celebration, I gifted a trip to my parents. I am cleverly joining in as well. Hey, time to go. Coming. I picked a souvenir for my ex-sister-in-law and headed to join my parents. For a while, I want to live peacefully doing my filial duties.